Now, of course, you're going to have guys like David Hume and all the atheist parrots of his argument, where they're just going to say miracles. Pff, we can't believe miracles. A miracle supported by any human testimony is more properly the subject of a derision than of an argument, because, I mean, what's more likely, that God violated the laws of nature in favor of humanity, or that somebody's just mistaken or lying, right? That's Hume's argument. Well, Hume was a doofus when it came to probability, and he sure didn't understand Bayes' theorem. And you could discuss that with a skeptic, but I think it's just way harder to argue with physical evidence. For example, here is a healing of a mute man, Pastor Dwayne Miller. He lost his voice after a severe bout of the flu in early 1990. He says the virus damaged the nerve tissue of his vocal cords beyond repair. Over 3 years, he says he was examined by 63 specialists in their teams, totaling over 200 doctors. His voice was reduced to a severe, painful, hoarse whisper. When he asked the doctor about his recovery, he was told, "There's no chance. It's not happening, right? You're just going to have this really scratchy, hoarse voice that is going to grate on people when you talk to them." And so Miller was a pastor, right? Dwayne Miller is the name, if I didn't mention that already. He was a pastor. He can't speak, so he quit his job. He moved to Houston. He took a government records job. He lost that job because he couldn't testify in court. Insurance stopped covering treatments. His wife became the primary provider of the household. He was depressed because, I mean, that's not a fun situation to go through. He did teach Sunday school one time because his Sunday school class, they remembered him. They loved him. They wanted to honor him. And they just begged him to fill in. We don't care how bad you sound. Just preach us a sermon, right? And so on January 17th, 93, Miller was teaching through the 103rd Psalm. He reached the verse about where God says he forgives all your sins and heals all your diseases. While teaching on healing, he said he still believed that God heals, but he said on the inside, he was having this conversation with himself, like, why not me, God? But as he got to the word pit, the pressure in his throat suddenly vanished. His voice returned while he was speaking, and the moment was recorded on audio. In fact,
on the other hand, to say that since we don't have anything after the book of Acts, that miracles ended at the book of Acts and they never happen again is equally as wrong. Because you have put God in a box both ways, and he doesn't want to be in the box. So the psalmist says, I'm excited. Bless the Lord, O my soul. One of his benefits is he heals all of my diseases. And then in verse 4 he says, and he redeems my life from the pit. Now, I like that verse just a whole lot. I have had, and you have had in times past, pit experiences. We've all had times when our life seemed to be in a pit, in a grave. And we didn't have an answer for the pit we find ourselves in. And I don't understand this right now. I'm but overwhelmed at the moment. I'm not quite sure what to say or do.
So there you go. I mean, that's pretty awesome. I get a little choked up every time I listen to that. But could this be fake, right? Doctors later confirmed that his voice did, in fact, get restored. He had previously been seen by lots of doctors and specialists, like I already mentioned. The account says that they could not find evidence of the prior problem. Now, think about this. If this were fake, hundreds would have known with his damaged voice. A hoax would require Miller, his doctors, his wife, the congregation to sustain an elaborate deception. A coincidence that would require his zero recovery chance to reverse suddenly while publicly teaching on the 103rd Psalm about healing. I mean, that's a crazy coincidence. And Miller reportedly continued speaking clearly afterward in his ministry. He's still giving his testimony to this day. He still speaks fine. And so that's pretty amazing. There's also cases of the blind seeing. We have Greg Spencer, who began to suffer vision problems in his late 30s in August of 98. He was diagnosed with juvenile macular degeneration. Once you have JMD, you don't come back. That's not a disease that just heals on its own. His eyesight rapidly worsened over a few months, with Greg becoming legally blind with uncorrected acuity in less than 2,400 in his right eye and 2,200 in his left. By May of 99, he registered for the Oregon Commission of the Blind in 99. He began receiving disability payments. We have a letter here from his doctor, Dr. Richard Welleber, diagnosing Greg with JMD. This is all medically documented. We also have the letter from the Oregon Commission of the Blind on June 23rd of 99, saying that Greg has been evaluated, and yes, we're going to, receive him and, help him be prepared to live his life as a blind man. Now, Greg was before he was a truck driver, so obviously he had to quit his job and receive disability. But before that, he was a police officer, and he had been exposed to a lot of things that just really tormented his mind. And he attended a Christian men's retreat between August of 19th through the 21st, 2002, where he had to wear thick glasses and still couldn't read the print of his Bible. He didn't even pray for physical healing. He prayed for the healing of his mind. He just wanted to be free from all the past trauma he experienced as a former cop. Ophthalmology records record 2 weeks later in early May, they noted near perfect and instantaneous improvement. So after the prayer, Greg had closed his eyes. He opened his eyes. He said that he could see a sign that said exit. He started looking around and just seeing everything. His wife was driving him home, and he was reading license plates and billboards because he was just so excited. And so the Social Security Administration had to investigate Greg for fraud, but they concluded that he wasn't lying, that he really was blind and now he could see. And so you get an idea by the visual there of what his uncorrected acuity was, pre-healing versus after. Like, this is a pretty amazing miracle that's just not explicable through naturalism whatsoever. We have a letter from his doctor, John Burpee, in May 3rd of 2002, and sending it to the Social Security Administration. And the Social Security Administration concluded their investigation and said there's evidence of juvenile macular degeneration. This is not fraud. And guess what? Greg went back to work. And so to deny this miracle, you would need wrong diagnosis, wrong testing, wrong disability status, mistaken witnesses, unexplained timing, receiving this miracle during prayer, mistaken post-healing exams, mistaken Social Security review, and over 2 decades of sustained accidental recovery, because Greg is still fine to this day, or some kind of wide-scale conspiracy for a guy to get some disability checks, only for him later to go back to his job doing what? Driving trucks, living the dream. And so again, I think this is best explained as a miracle. And so take that and put that in your pipe, Hume boys.